Alright, so today I went to local tractor supply in Santa Fe, Texas, and I picked up the Yardbird Chicken Plucker. So I saw some reviews online and looked to work alright, and I was able to get a $50 online discount at Tractor Supply. So I picked this one up for about $350. The website was showing $400. Real easy, just order online, pick up at the store. Wasn't too bad as far as weight wise, getting it out of the truck. It's got little handles on the side, but I really didn't use them. I just picked it up and yanked it out of there. But anyways, when you open the box up, this part is going to be sitting on top with that little hole there for the motor shaft. And then the next thing you see is this motor shaft and plate, and then the motor. And the motor is packed down in there with some parts and things. But when I opened it, I couldn't figure out how to get it out of there because it was latched tight. If you see on the side, these latches here, okay? Now those latches were fixed to each one of these points, 1, 2, 3, and 4, with these brackets. So I guess for packaging purposes, it was pretty good. Those brackets sat in there. And then each one of the latches, I just pushed the box away and unlatched them. So that was cool. But I couldn't really see down in there at first without pushing the box away. But also on the bottom of the latch were these little latches here that we use these a lot around the horse stables and things for chaining stables, the doors. And so it was pretty cool. I guess it secured each one of those latches, and so along with all the brackets. So I'm gonna get the rest of this unboxed. Again, down in there were the casters, the wheels, of course, and then some brackets, I guess, for the little kind of dolly system that's going to attach to the base. But let me pull this out and we'll get back to it. Oh, one other thing, you want to be real careful not to, from watching other videos, mess with that little sensor or whatever that is. I'm going to see what that is. I don't know if it's a safety switch or something to do with that bottom plate. But anyways, we'll read the directions and get back to it. Alright, so kind of read the directions a little bit. Got all my parts out, kind of laid out. I just wanted to go through this parts bag, and quite a few of the lock washers on the list are not in there, but I did notice that all your bolts have the nylock type nut on there, so which I don't see all of those listed on here, so I'm assuming that they've may just be going to that, but their documentation doesn't match up with that. Anyway, we're gonna make it work. One thing, when I was unboxing, this bottom plate was sitting down in there, which this thing is upside down, kind of inverted right now, but you see where the water hose ring is down in there? That's actually the top, and that plate was sitting down in there, and at first I was like, man, how do I get that out of there? Basically, you just gotta kind of shimmy it out of there, and quite a bit of force, because those rubber fingers are in there, and you'll just pull it on through there. Don't worry about it, you're not going to break anything. Those rubber fingers are pliable and they're going to bend. The other thing, this piece of styrofoam was actually flipped over and was the top piece that was sitting in the box when I unboxed it. What you do is, in the directions you'll see right off the bat, you'll flip that over, and then you're going to take the motor and its plate, and you're going to turn it over, and right there in the middle of the styrofoam there'll be a about an inch and a half, inch and a quarter I think, hole that you're going to stick the shaft in. It's going to sit in there real nice and snug to get ready to mount all the legs and the wheels and axle and everything onto there. So that's how you sit it upright from the bottom to assemble all the legs. The little switch I was talking about earlier, or I called it a sensor, I'm sorry, that's a proximity switch. So what that's going to do is it's going to line up when we get it together, just so that it can tell which position that it's in the right position and everything, and let that thing run. Alright, so all parts laid out, and I'm just going to go step by step here in the book, and be right back. Okay, so first step, it says get this axle, these wheels on there. When I went to roll this one, it was dragging. It was, you know, clunk, 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 clunk. So obviously I knew there's roller bearings in there, and it was dragging. So I was afraid one of the roller bearings was kind of disengaged, or that it had a problem of some sort. Well, on the actual axle here, there was a little blob, reminded me of like a little welding slag. Looks like, you know, when they use computerized robotic type welding stuff and it's tacking things, like a little slag jumped out there, and it was causing that to drag. So what I did, I just, to finesse it to where I didn't really mess up real bad, I took this kind of, I don't know what you call this thing, it's just like a little grinding bit from a drill, and I just barely buffed it off, and then I just kind of packed this with lightly with some lithium grease, just something to, a little lube, a little waterproofing. Grew up down here on the salt water on the Gulf Coast, and we overdo it with every kind of lubrication, or a product that's called Corrosion X, specifically the turquoise. There's a turquoise and a red can of Corrosion X, two different ones. The turquoise can is awesome. It's a marine grade corrosion, anti-corrosion, and you can put it all over your trailer and your especially all the undercarriage, your springs. It just makes a heck of a coating, and blocks all that, you know, salty air, salt water. Also, I use a water softener here, so I believe there's a little sodium in my water, so when I go to wash this thing off, I don't want any issues. But I'll end up spraying all this stuff, you know, the undercarriage with Corrosion X, and all this cheap kind of, you know, little painted stuff here, which, just like on your barbecue pit or anything outside, eventually starts rusting. And if you just take a few minutes to coat this stuff, it'll last 10 times longer, I promise you. All right, so that's the only issue I've had so far, right off the bat, you know, getting this axle together. And when you put these wheels on the axle, and you put that locking nut on there, it said in the book use a 16 millimeter, which does not work. You need a 17 for those. You're just going to snug them up until it sucks up tight to the lip of that axle shaft, that spindle there. All right. So next step, keep going. So for the axle, these two bolts right here in the middle that join the two pieces together, they're going to be the two smallest ones that were in your parts bag. So when I separated them, I had them sitting there, just the two small ones. They call them an M6. It's going to be called an M6 bolt. And you see where it says M6 spring lock washer. Those are not in there. I'm using the Nylox nut, which helps lock it. So it comes with those 2 bolts, 4 regular flat washers, and the 2 Nylox nuts. And then you're going to need 10mm wrenches to put that together. So that's how I put it together. If you've never used these Nylox nuts, they've got a little Nylox ring kind of insert in there or something that helps drag on that those threads there and won't back off. So you don't need that lock washer. All right, so I've got the wheels on the axle, and then through these legs that have the little axle supports there, the guides or whatever you want to call them. You see them right there. So you just slide one through there, and then slide the other one through there, and then they connect. And then these are your 2 M6 bolts. That's how they identify them on the instructions, is an M6 bolt. There's only 2 of them, and there's only 2 small washers for each one. So there was 4 of those small washers. They're calling them a M6 washer. There's no locking type washer. This is what I call a locking washer that has that. So seems to be missing those. Anyways, but they're the M6 Nylock nut, and they have that little nylon liner insert in there that's gonna lock it down for you, where they're not gonna back off. But anyways, when you put those in and go to tighten them up, those are 10mm on each side, and you're gonna need a 10mm wrench here and here at the same time, going in opposite directions, because you need a backup. Because when you try to put this Nylock nut on there, it drags, and you just can't finger tighten it. You gotta use a wrench on both sides. That's for you non-handyman, we call that a backup. So you gotta put a backup on one side to get it tight. And then the only other support I got left is that one, and it's gonna go right here. Now I don't know what that yellow arrow is for, whether it's just saying, hey, that side down, or what. I can't find nothing yet in the book. And there was a yellow arrow on one of those legs. But it basically said you can just put these 2 legs on either side. So as long as they're directly across from one another, to where that's going to end up assembling like that. So I kind of sat there and looked at it for a little while to make sure there's nothing different about any of those in the configuration. One thing I am bad about is I'm terrible about reading ahead. Each time I get back to these directions, I read ahead and I see something that I've already kind of missed, or whatever. So just read ahead. Like packing this thing, turning it upside down in this styrofoam, it was in the directions a few steps down. I should have read. And what's crazy is I make pharmaceutical products for a living in a process, and we use these huge just crazy amounts of documentation and procedures, and we have to read way ahead in those things, or we could really mess up a really high dollar, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 batch of material. And so at work I have to read ahead. So I think I'm bad when I get home. I get lazy and just kind of want to throw things together. Just read ahead, and a few little simple steps you'll see, and it'll save you 10 or 15 minutes. All right, so I'm gonna get this next leg on there, and then we'll go from there. All right, so all the legs are on. You are going to fit these bolts through these legs, and then out through the other side, just like that. and put those nylock nuts on there. It's gonna show you right here in the book, and see right here where it says M8 spring lock washer. There are no little lock washers in my packet. All there was the nylock nuts and the regular washers, which I'm fine with. I feel like the nylock nuts are fine. One thing is these holes that are cut in the legs and in the part that you connect to, that's connected to the machine, they're not cut perfectly because they're probably, you know, cut overseas somewhere in Asia, which I've dealt with in a lot of things, like you know, from Harbor Freight and things like that. Stuff that works, but at the same time you may have to do a little pushing or tapping. What I did with those is this leg here was a little tight getting these in, and I just put my wrench, it was 13 millimeter on both sides, but I put my 13 millimeter here and just started threading it in, and it started pulling through on the other side, and then I was able to get my nut on. I didn't really want to beat them through there and maybe gall up those threads. So it's good that it's a little snug fit too, because you're gonna have a, you know, some vibration because it's rotating equipment, this motor, and I'd rather the fit and everything be really tight. So that's probably what they were going for too. All right, so on to the next step. Legs are on. So it's about 2 in the morning. I'm out here and this thing just comes running by, scared the heck out of me. That's a crab. Yeah, so you know you live on the Gulf Coast or close to it when you have crabs running around your garage. And I'm a pretty good, I'm a few miles from the coast, so I'm living off one of the inlet bays here, but I'm still a couple miles from the water. And this guy just comes shooting out from nowhere while I'm sitting here reading the book. And I said a few choice words. Not that I'm scared of a crab, but when it just pops out at 2 in the morning. All right. All right, next step was to put this plucking finger in through this outer hole. These two were already in there. I don't know why they didn't go ahead and just put this one in there. I'm sure I'll figure it out later. But anyways, next step says take the plucking finger that was in the parts bag and install in the hole. That's all it says. It took me a minute to look at it and say what's the best option, because the hole's really small. It collars around a little slit in that finger, so that it stays in there real snug. So it's not real easy, but once you figure it out, it's not real hard either. But anyways, I had sprayed it with a little silicone, and that just seemed like it made it maybe a little harder. Got a little messy. But anyways, I just put it in from this direction, and you can see that's a conical shape, and it looks like it won't go, but I just took these, I took my channel locks and just grabbed it and just started kind of pulling and twisting from side to side, and just working that thing slowly through there, making sure that I didn't tear that finger, which I don't think you would, because that thing's pretty dang strong. But again, with all this, Asian made stuff, or wherever it's made nowadays, most likely over there overseas, you have to be careful with things. You don't want to break something while you're trying to put it together, and that happens a lot these days. So just pull it through there, and you're going to have to put some good old elbow grease into it and start whittling that thing and twisting and pulling it up, and it'll start popping through right along that edge. And what these are for, what it looks like, I'm assuming, is it's a sweep on the bottom of this plate that's going to sweep those feathers out that drain. But I have no idea why they included that in the step and didn't go ahead and do that for you. So there you go. So now I've set the bottom plate onto the shaft of the motor. So I took the motor and everything out of that box, which it was sitting upside down, turned it upright, set it on its legs, and then I set this on top of the shaft. What I did before I set it on the shaft, which it recommends in the book, is to grease the shaft. I would try to use a white lithium grease, you know. I don't know if all white lithium grease is food grade, but anyways, I just use white lithium grease. And then you have this a domed spacer. It's like a washer. You're gonna wanna set that with the dome sitting up. I think what it's domed for is to try to make a slight seal, but you know, sling water and everything away from there. Who knows? But anyways, you want the dome sitting up. And then the only lock washer that this thing did come with, which did not match up with the directions. Directions said there was a bunch of lock washers. There wasn't. The only one there was, and I believe this, you do need this one. It's called an M8 lock washer. And this is your shortest bolt. It's the M8 times 20 bolt. It's going to have left-handed threads. That means the threads on that bolt are cut in the opposite direction from your most, all your common right-handed thread bolts. So instead of turning it right in a clockwise motion to tighten it, you're going to turn it to the left. That's what left-handed threads mean. And it's probably because of the rotation of the motor. They don't want that to back off. It's rotating one way and the force is slinging in the opposite direction, and so you have left-handed threads to keep that thing from backing off due to the rotation of the motor. Alright, that's it on that, and I believe after this we're gonna set the tub on there, but let me tighten this up and let me see what size that is. So that you don't have to waste time. It is saying a 13. Let's just check it, make sure it is a 13. Yes, it is a 13. Alright. So basically the book says you need a 13mm wrench or socket. You're gonna need 10mm for those, and a 16. That's wrong. You're gonna need 10mm, 13mm, and 17mm as far as my parts went. Alright, final step was to set the drum on top of that base, and then you're gonna latch each one of your latches, and then you're gonna take that carabiner and run it through that hole. It just acts as a safety to help keep those from coming unlatched because they don't fit real snug. The one main thing you want to pay attention to, back over here, these two yellow arrows, that's your limit switch. There's a little magnet on one side, and so it's just going to make sure that that drum is sitting on there, and it allows that to satisfy the safety and then allow that motor to turn on. There's also a reset, like a breaker trip right there. If you couldn't get it started, check that. And then you got like a GFCI type thing on your plug. So I got this ready to start, and then I came down here to the start switch, and there was a safety screw sitting there that would not allow that switch to move. So I got to take that out, and then we'll start it up. Be right back. So not too bad. Got it started, and everything seems to be working fine. right, so everything's done. Just want to remind everybody that this is considered what we call in the industry, in the chemical plants or production, rotating equipment. You have that motor down there, and it may not turn very fast, but it's got a lot of torque, meaning it can really pull something in there and sling it around. And I don't know what kind of resistance it takes to trip that little breaker on there, but I wouldn't want to find out. Keep your hands out of there when that thing's turning, or don't try to get going too fast and you just reach down in there to grab that chicken and something bad happens. Make sure you take your time. I've seen too many things happen in the plants with rotating equipment over the years, last 20 years. So people's shirt tails, you know, we're supposed to have our shirts tucked in the plants. Shirt tails get caught in a rotating shaft, and it has no forgiveness. It will suck you up or really mangle you. So be real careful. Slow down, take your time, practice. So that's it. Next step will be in about 7 or 8 weeks. We're going to put our Freedom Rangers in here. I got the Freedom Rangers from the Freedom Ranger hatchery up in Pennsylvania. They were sent to me in about 2 days, 2 days old. They were air freighted to the post office. Worked out awesome. All of them were alive and have done well. I had a brooder sitting right here, which was basically just a big galvanized horse trough that I use for my horses. But I used it for the brooder and just had all my shavings in here and feed and such. This blue drum, that's going to be used for when I move them down to an old covered area. It's basically an old piece of a barn, old tack room that basically is just open to the outside now. And I take these drums, 35-gallon drums. I was going to use them for fuel storage, but I've used them for chicken water. It's awesome. I have these are called chicken nipples. You can Google them or Amazon them. I can add a link. These that I use have a lighter spring. It's easier for that chicken to push it. Some of them are harder, but those are great. Those have changed the game. I don't have to worry about any dirty water. That has saved me so much work, because one of the areas where I keep these chickens, I don't have water supply down there. And I can just load this drum up in my buggy, fill it up. You know, if I don't want to wrestle the whole 35 gallons, I can just fill it halfway and just slide it out of the back of the little John Deere Gator, and but it stays clean. I put a little bit of bleach in it, chlorine. So that is the way to go with those nipples. I've put them on 5-gallon buckets, 2-gallon buckets, everything I can put them on when I'm moving water around. And it just has really done well. So right now I've got my Freedom Rangers up here close to the house in a little, it's like an 8x2, 8x3, I want to say 8x2, little chicken tractor. It basically was an old outside kind of cage that I used when the chickens, like my layers, would come out of the brooder. That's too dark right now, but anyways, these guys are tucked away in here. You can't see it. So I've got a tarp around it right now because it's calling for rain, but I've converted that cage into like a chicken tractor, so I can move it around the yard. I've got wheels on the back and a rope on the front, and just slide them around. They're doing good. They're about 3 weeks old. I just moved them outside yesterday or the day before. They got all their feathers pretty much, and they're doing well. It's in the probably low 70s tonight. But I'm not going to keep them in the tractor forever. I've got some of those Premier One netted electrical netting type fences. Those are so awesome. I'll run those around that area that I was talking about earlier that I have. It used to be a piece of an old barn. It's got a concrete slab about 20 by 20, and I'll run it around there. And I've got an old coop that looks like 2 deer stands stuck together sitting on that slab that they can get up in if they want. But it's covered enough to keep food dry, and it's down there away from the house. They've got plenty of good high grass, pasture grass. here in Texas to graze on, along with the food I'm going to supplement them with. But yeah, I'm not going to do the tractor thing. I think that's cool, but I'm just going to do something different. I'm going to keep them in that netted fence and rotate that fence around that area down there on the grass. And if you want, you can use a solar fence charger and put power to that fence. Works great. It changed the game for me. I mean, I used to have every raccoon and possum and dog and cat, just and skunks and everything else. I mean, one year it was terrible, and I finally just invested and bought 200 feet of that netted fence, and it has saved our chickens. The layers, which we have quite a few. I can't believe I didn't do it a long time ago, but I didn't have to buy a solar charger because I have a hot wire on the horse pastures, and I just ran a pigtail over from the tag point on the netted fence over to the hot wire on the main pasture fences. So, and I did accidentally grab it one time with a closed hand, and it'll light you up. Thank goodness the charger was that where it cycles. It's not a constant charge. It's clicking, it's clicking, it's clicking. So, because your hand, you grab electricity like that, your muscles will contract and it'll stay gripped onto there, and people can get killed. I don't know about a fence charger, but it would not have been comfortable. Luckily, it was the intermittent cycles, and I was able to let go of it. So it works good. I watched my dog try to go get my chickens, and she tried it 2 times and did 2 backflips and didn't do it anymore. So anyways, I'll be looking forward to making another video in about 7 or 8 weeks or so, depending on how these chickens look when we get together, and hopefully as a family. My wife said she won't be part of the slaughter process, but my daughter can't wait. She's 14 and she's tough as it gets. And my dad, he's close to 70 years old, and he used to raise every kind of bird in South Houston growing up. They raised pheasant, chucker, chickens, turkeys, everything, and used to provide them for local sales and things like that. So he's got all the experience. He's going to come over here and show me the ropes, I guess. But I've been raising chickens a long time, but these are my first meat birds. I've just raised layers forever, so we'll see what happens. I'll show you this feeder that I made, and I don't remember where I got these tips from on this one, but this is just like a 5 or 6 gallon bucket with a lid that clicks closed, and this is one of those rubber pans that you can buy at the feed store. And all I did was just kind of, I mean, it's not fancy. I just jabbed some holes in there with maybe as a spade bit or something, and it kind of cracked a little bit. But anyways, I just did them about half as high as the lip, because I want that feed to stay, about right here. And these chickens get a little bigger, and they'll all be able to get around that. And all I got to do is come down there in the morning and make sure that they've got food, and which I'm gonna keep put up at night. I'm just gonna, either me or my wife or daughter will run down there every morning and give them a certain ration of food, and that'll be it. But this is just a homemade kind of thing. I bolted it through the bottom into the bottom of the bucket. So cheap, easy, one piece. It works. And that there's a starter grower that I got on a real good price, about 250 pounds of feed, barely $10 a bag. So all right, that's enough for the night, and y'all take care.